Thank God it's Friday.
And welcome back to segment number 2 of Have No Fear right here on Iron Realm Media. We are still joined by Jason of the family Disbury and Roxanne Glenn.
Yay.
And we have some moon stuffs going on. Apparently, last week didn't quite solidify with everyone. As great of an observation as Marshmallow Moon was, I don't think it worked for everybody. I think Rob still has some issues, but he's handicapped, mind you, because he's stuck to the bottom of the ball, so he sees everything backwards. So he's having a little bit of trouble wrapping his brain around these impossible moon phases on the ball. So I thought maybe John might have to touch on a couple points again. And then we have a fabulous representation or representation of some moonlight temperature that Adam has taken. And then from what I understand, Jason wants to tie in some tides as well. So it's a lunacy night.
Let's see if we stick to the script.
There's a script, is there?
Only as outlined by Mr. Corey there. That's as good as we've got.
No one sent me a script, so I've completely...
No one sent me a script. I was pulled that right out of my butt.
The script I've got's been completely redacted.
Oh,
that's all the best bits. Sorry. If it's shit now, why?
Where are we starting then? With John's mood.
Might as well. I mean, Rob still had some issues. And I guess there's Mick West had some issues. Mick, I mean, we only had a couple hundred views on that video, but Mick West was one of them. And he says, we just needed to get a scale model. So maybe that's our issue. Maybe that's why we don't understand it properly. Because we
he said we need a scale model of the universe. Isn't that what his exact words were?
I don't think those were his exact words. Give me a...
Oh, I thought it was a scale model of the solar system or something along those lines. And I would just love to invite Mick West on to show us his scale model of the solar system.
Nice for him to show us the solar phases, lunar phases. Hello.
Yeah.
That would be nice to show us a crescent moon at midnight and a gibbous moon during midday and how that works in relation to the position of the sun. Because, yeah, I'd love to see that, whether you're in the northern regions or the southern regions.
Well, apparently looking at it in the program Celestia makes it real.
You can see what happens in the program. I mean, it's right there in the program. How can you miss it?
Well, that's all I ask for is him to show me, or anyone, to show me a 3-circle diagram of being able to see some sort of crescent moon at midnight or a gibbous moon at midday. That's not much to ask, is it?
When you stretch out the distances and apply relativity, John, light bends around balls and does all kind of up and down trickery. And
if you've got a telescope that's strong enough, you can see your own arse. Exactly.
And that's for the sunshine. But yeah, there's a whole conversation here on this video between Mick West and a fellow named Frank Kritzman. Mick West says, you might want to look at an actual scale model of the solar system.
That's it.
Frank says, Mick West, prove it wrong.
Well, I want to see this actual scale model of the solar system. Mick, please show us, because I haven't seen one and I'd love to.
There's one in the desert. The one in the desert is a good one. He says, try a program like Celestia. You can see what happens. Alternatively, try making a physical scale model of the sun, moon, earth system. Then he gave a link to the one in the desert. Frank Crispin says, hey, I'm trying it in Stellaris right now. I've also created a scale model in 3ds Max based off the numbers that they've given us. Mick West, by the way, the laser video was pretty cool. Frank Richmond, great. Your model should clear some things up. Frank says, Mick West, mine didn't. I'm just going to do some real world observations instead.
Right, so actual scale model of the solar system means a computer mock-up.
Apparently.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, I just like the way he refers to that as if you see that, it will clear it up, and therefore there's no need for him to explain why going to an actual model would explain what our issue is. Just bunk him again. It's authority, isn't it? He's standing there. If you go and look at this model, you must be stupid if you can't understand why what we've just pointed out is incorrect.
Well, saying that, Adam, is there... I'm going off the cuff here. Obviously, we're completely off script. But there are people out there like Rob Durham who are capable of doing scale models of the universe in CAD. And I would like to put it out there. Maybe someone could do a scale model of the universe and still show that it's impossible to see a gibbous moon at midday and a crescent moon at midnight. Shouldn't be that difficult to do. If you knew how to work CAD, that is, which I can't even work Paint.
Our point is, we appreciate, don't we, that the moon phases are caused by the three relative the sun, moon, and Earth. And hopefully our question last week was, why is it then, if that is the case, that you can see these phases when clearly you shouldn't be able to? Because if we did live on a ball, that ball is facing in the opposite direction, and your line of sight, i.e. what is observable in terms of your visible horizon, where the moon would be for this supposed phase, you would have to be looking through the Earth.
Well, for example, today I was out walking in the fields with a rather shaggy mutt, and it was 2:00 in the afternoon in the UK at 51 latitude, and I could see a big gibbous moon in the sky. And it wasn't necessarily on the horizon. It was probably, let's say 25, 30 degrees up. That is an impossible moon phase on the ball model. And I'd love anyone, including Mick West, to show me, scale model or not, how that works.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, you've never seen it done in an actual model, then, John.
Sure, it's all you need.
That's all you. Then you'd understand, I guess.
I mean, even if they showed me, like, they've got orreries, haven't they? It took me ages to work out how to say that word, orrery. And
You said it very well.
show me. There was someone I remember talking on Twitter, and I'm gonna wander here for a sec if you'll indulge. And he was buying a magazine every month, one of these fucking rip-off magazines where they say build a scale engine, piston engine after 32 weeks or whatever, and it's cost you 550 quid, and you could have gone out and bought the real thing for that. He was building an orrery by buying a magazine every month, and it would have a different layer to it and a different planet, and he was putting it all together. And then he became a flat earther and ritually burnt this thing, which I wish he hadn't done. But like I say, to anyone out there who has a working orrery, then please make a video or something, show us how you can get and how you can display these impossible, what I still maintain are impossible moon phases on the ball model, because you can't. And I've been asking for 3 years now. Out. I thought by saying out, it would sort of let you know that I'd shut up
Didn't
and
work, John.
stopped babbling.
Didn't
But
work, mate.
maybe I should have said
We were all-
over and out, or
How long it was gonna
Over to
take.
you, Josh.
or I yield the floor. It seems to be the common one. I'll shut up now.
And back to the studio.
In today's news.
But we did get a lot of good responses too from the video. I mean, some people didn't get it still, but a lot of people did. A lot of people, I'm telling you, Zach's Marshmallow Moon, that's it really did it for a lot of people. And once you realize that your head will be the earth.
I think we should play Marshmallow Moon. I think we should play the 3 minute, 4 minutes of Marshmallow Moon for those who might be new to the show, just found it and don't know what the hell we're talking about, which is probably half the panel. So what do you reckon?
Excellent.
Give
Cue
me
it up,
2
John.
minutes.
Okay.
Know what that means.
No, I'm queuing it up. Don't worry. You need to talk though. And talk.
Because I didn't believe you because I was actually queuing it up also.
I've already done it.
And I've lost my floating window again and just now found it, or I would have been talking, John. I was even getting uncomfortable with that pregnant pause.
So now everyone's queuing it up and no one's talking.
I'm not queuing. I'm
now
talking.
we're all talking about queuing it up. So is someone actually queuing it up, or should I carry on queuing it up, or should I concentrate on talking?
Power director.
Can you share it to Zoom? Oh my God.
I'm seeing it.
That's so good.
And I
You
like-
off if you can, everyone, while it plays.
So we have a full moon when I am directly in between the marshmallow or the moon and the sun, right?
And you are Earth.
Yeah, I am Earth. Now, if I move it over this way, part of the marshmallow, we'll say it's a gibbous now because part of it is being shadowed. And it's still, I am somewhat still in between the light source and the moon, the sun and the moon. Now, when we go to make me and the moon even with the sun, it's a half a marshmallow now. So as long as I am in between the moon and the sun, it should be bigger than half a marshmallow or half a moon, always, whenever I'm in between it. Now, when I go and make the marshmallow closer, the line will get even smaller and smaller as I get closer to the sun until it gets to halfway point again. It'll start getting smaller. The crescent will always get smaller when the moon is in between you and the sun.
And take note that you are now in the daylight. You're now at daytime.
Yeah, now I'm at daytime. Yeah, I'm looking at the sun. So that's your new moon right there. And then it starts crescenting and you can see it.
And that's all you should ever see. When
So the
moon-
crescent always happens. Yeah, the crescent always happens during the daytime. It's
During the daytime. And round
once
the
it hits
back.
50, you can never see it at midnight.
What
when
I need you to do now, what I need you to do is do a waltz around the light while you are, I need you to do a waltz around the light, if you know what I mean, because the Earth and the Moon spins at nearly the same rate. Takes 28 days for that moon to get around the Earth, or you know what I mean. So that's the bit that I'm trying to get my head around, is that bit, because you're doing it you're doing a whole month in a turnaround there.
Slow it down. But Zach, can you set up a gibbous moon for us?
Right there.
Okay. Yeah. So
Here, I'll get it even closer. See, you can
Yeah.
still see the marshmallow where it's shadowed.
you can see, look, Rob, that
That's daylight. That's daylight. And he's got one, hasn't he?
no, that's the
No, I'm
that's,
facing away.
That's
So
away
it's in
from
I'm
daylight.
in between.
Can you see where his head's facing? His head, i.e., the position of the Earth where he is on the Earth, means it's night time.
Yep.
So he can see. Right. Now keep the moon, the marshmallow, where it is. And what Zach's going to do is turn his head around like he's possessed. So it becomes daytime for him. How can he see that gibbous moon in the daytime visual horizon he has? Bring the marshmallow back round to you now, Zach, and look what happens to the marshmallow. Turns into a crescent.
Well, soon be told.
Now, if he turns his head to midnight and leaves it at the crescent, how can he ever see that crescent at night?
Yeah, all right. Right.
We did all those freaking slides, and we only needed a marshmallow.
That's all we needed.
Yeah, right. All right. Where's Rob when we need him?
Yep.
What we've got is Rox and Jason. What are your thoughts on this, guys?
Well, it's not very much. I find myself speechless, but I've been, as you may know, I've done a few bits and pieces with Dave Marsh, so I'm like constantly quizzing him on things and asking him about things to do with the moon, and like just that short video that you played, like it kind of makes sense to me. I'm gonna just put my hand up and say I can't wrap my head around it because it might need explaining to me in a slightly different way. However, it makes sense to me in the sense where I'm like, even today, I don't know, was it you, John, that said that, were you out walking the dog today?
Yeah, Roxanne. Yeah.
So I was driving in South London today, and I looked up. I was in traffic as usual, and just looked dead ahead. What was really weird actually is when I left my house, the moon was dead ahead, and I was like, "Look at that, that's the moon! What are you doing there?" And I literally, it felt like if I was looking at midday, it felt like I'd literally looked at 2 o'clock, and boom, there was the sun. And I thought, what are you two doing? Having a conversation? Like, it's a bit public, isn't it? Like, you're right, it's sitting right beside each other. Hello.
And today it was a gibbous moon, so it was more than half size. Yeah.
You're going to be kissing. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's broad daylight. No one's looking up. Everyone's looking at their phones. Look at this, guys. I'm looking at everyone in their cars, and they should be driving. They're all looking at their phones. If I'd have been a police officer, I'd have got my Bruce bonus today. Everyone.
But now, if you'd looked up and seen the sun in the sky, say, like you say, 2 o'clock or whatever, and you'd seen the moon in the sky, but it was a crescent moon, like a sliver of a moon, then that would have made sense. That should have made sense. But the fact that it was a gibbous moon, i.e., more than half the size, there is no way to see that shadow in the way they describe it, unless the moon is behind the Earth or the Earth is between the moon and the sun.
So for me, that made sense. That actually made sense, and it was purely just because of what I saw today with my own eyes. It was almost like it was staring me in the face. In fact, I thought to myself, if I look at this moon, so like I was looking at the sky so much, I was actually looking at the sky as much as other people were looking at their phone. And I thought, imagine if a police officer stopped me and said, "Right, that's it, you're done." Like done, like looking at a phone. Like, could you get done for looking at the sky while sitting in traffic?
Next year, probably.
Basically doing the same thing. You're just looking up, not down. You're looking at something, concentrating on something else, and not the road.
There is probably a statute out there to achieve that. Absolutely. I heard someone got caught in the UK the other day. A driver was prosecuted for having allowed his co-driver or passenger to smoke in front of the children who are in the back of the seat, in the back seat of the car. So anything's possible.
I think so too. So I did want to get my phone out and film it because I was like quite shocked at how close they were together and how, as I say, voluptuous the moon looked. And I was like, yeah, if I get my phone out, probably gonna get. It's like I'm that unlucky person. Like there'll be 20 people around me on their phones. I'll bring my phone out and it'll be me that gets stopped, not anyone else. So I thought, yeah, on that note, I'm not touching my phone. So yeah, I like that. That was good. Anyone else? Thoughts, Jason? Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, without a doubt, I've thought this for quite some time now that you can't have. I mean, I didn't know the difference between gibbons and all, and was it whining, something like that. All I knew is that half, quarter, 3/4. My science education didn't go that far. But looking at like I've always thought like looking at the shadow in half. You shouldn't have half of more sunlight like in the daytime. You shouldn't, like that makes no sense whatsoever for me. I didn't know, I wouldn't have known how to explain that, but you perfectly explained it with your marshmallow. And yeah, I mean, like it doesn't make sense what they're saying. It does not fit the actual model what they present.
Unless it does, we just need that scale model of the solar system. Apparently,
I can't even accept that, because the angles never fit, do they? Like it just never fits. I mean, like it doesn't matter how far back you take this sun. Like if they say it is 93 million miles, 91 or 93. If it is that far back, it still doesn't fit on the angle. That it's always slightly off, isn't it? It just doesn't fit.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
But Brandon Toy in chat says it's all about the axial tilt. It's all, we're not looking at that at all.
Well, maybe we should tilt our heads then.
Son of a bitch! I forgot all about the axial tilt.
You see now, there we were.
Well, it works so well on Earth. I mean, you get that 23-degree tilt, magically turns sunlight cold, like, and I know when I tilt my hand 3 degrees and approach a fire, it cools it right off. So, I mean, tilt. It's all about the tilt. Come on.
You just got to factor in that
Can I
666 in there somewhere. That fixes it all.
If it's all right, can I mention something about the axial tilt? If that's okay.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
I wouldn't let her do it either, Josh. It's bang out of order.
Go on forever.
Right.
No, please, Roxanne, go ahead.
Okay, so like no one thus far has recalculated the axial tilt. For example, Sun to Polaris, etc. Yeah, like 2 days worth of observation, their own observation, not random footage. Yeah, and no one's been able to show repeatable science. But what has been observed by someone, for example, Z Proxy, who's taken footage in April. Yeah. He's shown in 1 day in 58 degrees north. Do you know that's a bigger jump than we're taught the moon is from us? So with that being said, it can't be a globe. Something's definitely wrong. And the guy in the chat room is right. Why is no one questioning those observations that are being repeatedly made about the axial tilt? Like 58 degrees north, that's a disgusting jump. Like, so shout out to whoever that was in the chat room. Just massive shout. And shout out to Z Proxy, Cosmic Surfer, Dan Smith, and all of their observations, yeah? Z Proxy doing bits, so Cosmic Surfer, so Sam Smith. Thanks to those, I met Adam. So yes, and yes again. Thank you. And I yield the floor.
Nice.
I've still got 2 pair of 360 glasses laying around here somewhere. Neither one with a button to actually get them to click and do things that I need them to do. So I've got them. They're just about useless.
Yeah, we don't have any continuous 360 footage from ground to over 50 kilometers in altitude stuff.
Here's my nausea goggles.
VR have had over £8 million worth of funding and haven't got the project off the ground. They're over 800 days overdue. VR Space, look them up. They had a Kickstarter fund and they got over £1 million to get the project off the ground, to get ground to 50 kilometers, 360 footage, unedited, unbroken footage, and it's not off the ground. There's another thing no one's questioning. No continuous 360 footage from ground to above 50 kilometers in altitude. That's nuts. I yield the floor again. Sorry. Take it away, guys.
I feel sorry for Stan and Cosmic Surfer and Z Proxy and all of that, because from what I can see, they can see something that no one else can see, that is so obvious or whatever, that I can sort of sympathize with them with the moon phases and being able to. And all I can say to those guys is just, you're on the bus ahead of us. Just
You know what? Can I say
wait,
one more?
wait for us, or explain it to us, or in some other way it needs explaining, like a marshmallow, like all these other ways we're trying to explain these same things. We will catch you up. We're not shills. We're not. We just need to know what we know, and I'm sure we'll catch you up at some point. But I yield the floor as well.
No, someone came up with a really good visual representation of kind of what Cosmic Surfer, I think Stan and Z Proxy are talking about. Is it Phuket World? Is it Phuket?
He did a video of someone else. I can't remember it now. I tweeted it as well, but he had the sort of celestial sphere. He was explaining the equatorial mount and how it would work on a flat Earth as well as a globe Earth. Sorry.
Yeah, but there was aspects of that visual representation that were quite similar to some of the the visualizations that they've got. If you get the 360 kit and look at the data that they're looking at, like the data that would show that we live on a ball doesn't, because if we did live on a ball, we would be in an elevator shaft flying up and down and stopping. It's just no. It's just a big, fat, juicy no. Does that make sense? So sorry if I just rambled that out there, but I think it's really good that people are trying to push the envelope and trying to get working visual aids and visual representations, because it's the only way sometimes you can convey to someone to get their indoctrination and thinking they're on a ball flying free.
I think it's ultimately harder for the 360 crew, Z Proxy and Cosmic Surfer and Stan, to get this across, because it involves the end user having a set of goggles, or even software that can play it, that sort of thing. It means the end user has to do something. So it's ultimately more difficult for them, but I'm sort of starting to see how frustrated they are and can be. Yeah.
Well, someone in chat was asking about equatorial mount and how they work on a flat Earth, and I just saw a video about that.
Was it Wolfie?
I don't know who it is, actually. I'll have to go back and see. But don't we have a video that we just saw? We're sharing back and forth about that? Yeah, right here.
That's what we were talking about. The Phuket World made a video about the guy who made a video.
I'm sorry. I had to step away for a second. People were knocking on my door, so I missed that part of it. I'm coming back in and seeing the discussion and chat as well, and knowing we just watched a video. So
in fact, it'd be good to watch that. It's only about
I just copied it. I'll put it here in the chat with us, and whoever can share it. I'll go to the original channel as well, so they can get the proper credit. Hang on one second.
I think that'd be worth playing, because
well, I've got a question, John. An equatorial mount. How does an equatorial mount know what's going off once it disappears below the visual horizon?
It doesn't.
It's got a computer thingy on it. I don't know. I really don't. I've never had one.
No, you set your latitude, and it corresponds to the celestial sphere.
It just turns. It tracks. No, it just turns in a circle
on a certain axis
where it thinks it's going, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't know that. It doesn't prove that. It just turns on a circle which approximates to what it's presupposed to do. It could equally set up that equatorial mount with the parameters described with regards to perspective what happens and a circular motion above your head.
Right.
And it gives the same output for the motor functions on the equatorial mount. It doesn't prove anything at all other than the initial ball model was set up and based upon observation. And those observations are then set up to define how the equatorial mount works. The equatorial mount follows the patterns in the sky. That's all it does. That's how it was defined first, by recording the patterns in the sky. I yield the floor.
You didn't yield. I was going to say.
I did it. I did. I just wanted a nice. I wanted a dramatic pause before I yielded.
Well, will you got one of them? That's for sure. No, it's one of those things. It's like the Eratosthenes stuff. It's not conclusive of a ball or a plane. It depends what
where you start your assumption.
Input in. Yeah, exactly. It depends what figures you put in to start with, as to whether if you on an equatorial mount you put your latitude in, and it shows you what you would see on a sphere, but it also shows you on a different model what you would see on a plane. So it's not conclusive either way, and it's yet another ball Earth. This is impossible. It can't work on a flat Earth proof down the toilet. Sorry, Wolfie.
Good, Josh. You did start with the first part. I put them in there backwards. Thank you.
Equatorial mount can work on a flat plane. Okay. This is the southern pole star from the equator. Okay, and it's 10,000 kilometers from this star to the equator, where I am standing in this center. I'm always in the center. I can never get to the equator, because when I move to the equator, the stars 30, 40, 50, 60, the stars actually go over the top. Now, an equatorial mount will work is because the polar alignment, that this angle here from where you're always standing is centered to the center, and these circles are actually spinning around this pivot point, this axis. That is why you can see the stars, depending on if you're at the equator or 10 degrees, that pole star is moving towards you, okay? And those stars are spinning around that pivot point until you get to under the pole star. You understand that? That is why the sun itself at the equator is spinning around this bottom circle, and then 10 degrees higher and up to 20 degrees in summertime in the south. Okay, but when you walk back to the equator, notice the pole star is actually moving away from you back, because you're traveling to this side of the screen. The pole star is going away from you until it gets to the horizon. Therefore, now you're at the equator. If I went to the South Pole, the ground doesn't move like this. The angle of the ground stays flat like this, and the pole star slowly becomes above my head. It's all to do with perspective. But anyway, that was a quick demonstration on how a equatorial mount can work on a flat plane from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. Okay, the ground is staying flat. You understand that? and it's due to distance. It's the same distance from the star to where I'm standing, from the north to the south. Anyway, thanks for watching.
Now, if that's not a head fuck, then I don't know what is, but I know that it makes sense.
I was about to say I couldn't have put it more succinctly.
Well, according to Plan 22, whatever it is, we just need a smaller scale model. And so it's either too big or too small. We cannot get this shit right. What is wrong with us?
We're too busy basing it on what we see.
Just flirting. That's what's wrong. Shit.
Adam, didn't you have some thesis to present?
Absolutely not.
You thought you got away with it, didn't you? Meekin, bring your presentation up here and read it out.
Do it.
With
This is really good.
enthusiasm.
I've shared our original video, the Moonlight and Marbles video, quite often, because this subject comes up quite often. The temperature of the moonlight. I thought this was a really good presentation. I thought this X marks the spot was as dramatic as most any other thing out there, as offering proof that it's not what we're told.
X marks the spot. That is legendary. Well, because it is an X, isn't it, where it crosses over? There you go. All you need is a little tweak on the marketing. X marks the spot. Moonlight temperature.
It's our next flat earth.
Take it away, Adam. Yeah, right.
I'm just trying to set this up so that you don't moan at me that you can't see it. So give me a second.
That's all right. I'll moan at you either way. Don't matter.
Yeah, fair point. Can you see? Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got to make sure everybody else can. Okay. So this was. We're there, Josh.
I believe so.
I'll move that. So this was, like you said, something we did ages ago, weren't it? 2017, June, April, May, June time. Savage challenged me.
Almost 2 years ago.
It is. It's coming up to that, isn't it? So I'd gone back through the data and tried to make it a bit more digestible. And before I start, I suppose, if I just pull this on screen, it gives you an idea of the actual real equipment. Look at the quality. At the quality of that.
I hope Elon Musk is taking note. It looks ultimately more realistic than his CGI landing pencil.
I've got a few probes. I've got one in the dome, one in here, and for the purpose of this experiment, we're not going to discuss them. We're just going to discuss the other two probes in these here. And as you can see, one's got shade, one's in sunlight, and the same on the other picture. It's in the shade. This is just in sunlight to kind of demonstrate, hopefully, with regards to Moonlight and some of the initial tests, just roughly what we're doing and how far apart the probes were. That there's no real conditional differences between the two sensors. And for all the crude data, that is there in the old presentation. All the numbers and all the boring stuff is down in there and contained for everyone. If in the other presentation, if you wanted to really wanted to look at it. So what I've tried to do here is just take the crude data, which is just the two basic core results, which is the two probes that were most fundamentally just exposed to Moonlight or not. And I suppose that work. Okay. The first thing was what John had challenged me with was to go and do it a bit better. And that's what I tried to hope to do, to try and narrow down some of the criticisms or take them on board and try and set up a test that was minimized outside effects and really did its best to kind of isolate the variable as Moonlight. The first thing I did was make sure we had proper thermometers, and I went for probe thermometers, and these we use these in the pharmacies, in the fridges and ambient testings to make sure storage is correct, and they have to be calibrated, and they are calibrated to an accuracy of 0.1 degree. So I was quite happy with that. I thought that was a nice bit of kit, and it dealt with a lot of the criticisms that you'll see in Moonlight temperature testing, which is people just pulling out one of these infrared scanners, which isn't particularly indicative of anything other than the general area that you apply the scan, and the further away the scanner to the area you're scanning, the bigger the scanning area. So I tried to get rid of that one by having a probe which was itself just measuring its. So we're not necessarily measuring the temperature of anything other than the probe itself as it sits there in these conditions. And with that, obviously, that created a problem in itself in terms of how the test was going to measure stuff, because if that's the case, these aren't super reactive. They absorb and sit in the ambient temperature and give you an indication of the ambient temperature. But that takes a little time for that temperature change to permeate. So it's something that you have to take readings over time, not necessarily a 1 second burst with a infrared scanner or quick probe. But I think that helps because within some of the data and the graphs, it does demonstrate a little bit. So what I wanted to do first was make sure that the equipment worked just in terms of common sense. So,
Adam.
Yeah.
Sorry, bud. Could I just ask if we have explained what it was the mission was, what the method or the objective was to measure the difference between direct moonlight and direct moon
I'll
shade?
come to that. Yeah.
Okay. No,
I just want to cover the equipment and then I'll come to that first, because just in terms of when I was testing the equipment, what I wanted to do was make sure it was all reasonable and work within the parameters that the calibration certification was saying. And so I did just a number of quick tests, which was basically in my little shed, turning the heater on and watching the probes react, getting it really, really hot, keeping them apart, and just testing. And you can see here during the standard conditions, they're within the ranges stated of, actually they're within more, because you'd allow a 0.2 tolerance for the two, but you can see they're within 0.1 of each other. Now that 0.1 of each other is really good because it means they're quite accurate, because their tolerance is 0.1 of the actual temperature. So one could be out by 0.1 more and one could be out by 0.1 less, meaning big 0.2 difference. But this showed that they were fairly concurrent with each other. And the same here, as once I switched the heater off, they descended and reacted to the conditions the same. So that was kind of the happy with the equipment working under those conditions. And there's just one more bit, and then I will come to the point of the experiment, John. What I did for a little bit was here. These are the response to sunlight tests. So I just did a little bit more further testing to just see how the probes responded to shade and no shade with regards to exposure to sunlight. And as expected, in the shade, the red, see that the overall temperature of the probe was less, and in the blue, when it's exposed to the sunlight, the temperature got a lot hotter. Basically common sense and how we all understand the world. So I was happy that the equipment confirmed that. So with that in mind, I'll come to what John was saying, and the purpose of this test was to do, or a study really, was comparative study really, in terms of the thermal effects of exposure to moonlight. And I suppose the simplest way, probably the most flat earth pop culture way of dealing with it, would be to apply some methodology to this. And there's nothing wrong. We're not talking science here, but there's still nothing wrong with any approach to apply a hypothesis to it. And I think this is probably the best way to keep this summarized. So with regards to that, what I would say the research hypothesis would be that the moon's light is not a reflection or direct reflection of sunlight. It is possessive of its own unique properties and creates a thermal cooling effect. And that's kind of what the tests are set up to look at. And with regards to that, then we obviously need a null hypothesis. So the moon's light is a reflection of light from the sun. It will have zero or limited thermal warming effects, which is based on common understanding of what we would. Does that answer your question, John, in terms of?
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Loving this slide. It shows correlation, and I wonder if you could transpose these slides over the moon slides and see if there was any sort of correlation as well.
Well, you'll see in these slides, look, if you look at the temperature differences, if you look at test 2, for example, the hot sunny afternoon, and the variance, look, in the temperatures is 10 degrees almost. And bigger, actually, isn't it? 4 hours. So they just, it again shows that they're working in all the parameters. And for me, I was just happy that the equipment was working, it was reasonable, and it represented my understanding of reality as I went into the next set of tests.
That's it. I mean, I used this, I bought something cheap from China, which had 2 probes on it, and I was going to stick, coming back to plumbing, obviously, I was going to stick the one probe on the flow and one on the return and be able to measure the differential between the two. And to test their accuracy, I just sellotape them together and read what the temperature was, you know, whether they were saying the same temperature or not. So yeah, this is why I passed it on to you, because I knew you had access to thermometers and stuff that were certified as being accurate. So, which not many people do.
I purchased these specifically, John. They're not second-hand ones. They were bought specifically for the test, and they were £50 each. And the thermometers are fine. They're all the same as the ones you could buy for a tenner on eBay. But it's the calibration. So off they go to testing labs to prove that the temperatures they're showing. That's what cost the money. But I thought it was worth the investment, because do it right. You know what I mean? So we've done
Absolutely.
all that, and we went off to this first test, and you can see here now. Look, that the shade, moonlight, are represented with shade in the red and moonlight in the blue, and obviously we've got the reversal of what we were seeing in the sunlight. This is minutes along the bottom, and as you can see, that they're out there. It's a cool evening. I've brought them out of the shed, and I'm just looking at the rate of response here, and they're pretty much cooling all the way down to a decent variance where the maximum point is 1.4 degrees, which, as we stated with regards to the accuracy of the probes being 0.1, which allows us 0.2, that's quite a significant. It's well outside the realms of it's down to the equipment.
So from a layman's point of view, you took them out, you took the two probes out of your shed and you put one in the shade and one in the moonlight, and the moonlight is in blue and the shade is in red. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So,
cool.
So at that point, I was quite happy. I've been doing it an hour or so, and at that, it was during the summer, and the kids had a tent out in the garden, and I've got all this equipment on a little trolley. So I've just rolled it into the tent, and 5 minutes I thought, I'll go and check the temperatures. So I've just carried on taking the temperatures, and you can see it's quite interesting that they both returned to the same point once neither of them were exposed to anything. They've both cooled down, and the night's going on, so that's part of the reason that the overall temperature's decreasing. Right. And that's part of the error within all of the tests. I am unable to control the fact that during the night it gets colder. So part of the way the test is set up is to look at the rate of cooling, so the gradient of the line as well, which is quite important. So
but again, from a layman's point of view, Adam, sorry. So you took them out of the shed, one into the shade, one into the moonlight. That leads us up to, along the bottom axis, to 65 minutes. And then you put them both in a tent.
Yeah.
And they, as you can see, literally
merged.
Came together and merged to the same, showing their accuracy again.
Now, the distance between each other on the trolley hasn't changed. The only difference is I've moved them into the tent. So it's still cold, but they've got a cover over everybody. And for me, this is quite good because it shows that within that time range, look, the two probes are responding to the environment they're in. And when to me, that's a good one that the equipment is accurate and responsive, because given that, look, you take, and it's quite good as well because you put them in the tent, look, and the night's still cooling, and the red one that's in the shade still continues to cool with the night. But the blue one, look, it actually warms up for a bit because it's no longer exposed to whatever it was exposed to. And as far as we can see in the test, it's only moonlight. And then they both reach a point which is probably close to the ambient temperature of the air, and then they continue to cool with the rate of the evening together. So that was a great first test that said, whoa, bloody hell, there's something to look at here, and your equipment makes sense. Now, I then shared that with you, John, didn't I? And you went, yeah, but you want to do this.
Well, this perfectly shows that they're in alignment, because they come into alignment at the end when they're brought into the same similar environmental conditions, i.e. inside the tent. But yeah, it needed to be hammered home. Well, it needed the control. So that I was told from the bolometer expert at Cardiff University that it needed a control. You needed to swap things over and it to show the exact opposite of what you showed before. So yeah, carry on.
So this is test 2 then. And with that in mind, I thought, well, I'll extend the readings but do exactly what you said, which is at this point here at halfway, at 100 minutes, sorry, did exactly what John's saying and swap the probes over, literally just move them a foot either, relative to each other, and put them so that the one that was in the shade is now in the moonlight, the one that was in the moonlight is now in the shade. And as you can see, initially before that, it followed the same general trend with the separation and again a variance look of 1.1 degree. When we swapped it, you can see the effect. It's quite visible. They swap over, and within 35 minutes, look, we've again achieved a reverse variance of 1 degree. And that's really the one that says, bloody hell, what are the variables in this if it's not the moonlight? Because just moving these things a foot and swapping them over seems very strange. There doesn't seem the atmospherics. They're not protected in any way. They're exposed to the same bit of my garden. They're a foot apart. So the only major change, the only major variable we're changing appears to be whether or not they are exposed to direct moonlight. So I'll follow on just a little bit with the next few, and I did this another night. Again, you'll see that the moon's at different phases, and to be honest, that requires a hell of a lot of statistical data to apply any inference to the phases of the moon to this. But there are differences, look. 0.8, 0.6 here. But again, what's important, after 36 minutes, I swap the probes over, and once again we'll get the crossover with regards to the variance. It's reversed. The one that's
Josh said, X marks the spot.
That's it. No, it's and I'll go to test 4, and again it's quite significant. And this is probably the point. This one's an hour long, but I didn't start till 12:15 at night. I thought I'd try really late. Some of those others have been evening, so I thought I'd do it as late as I can. And I've got to the point here at 51 minutes where I've got the variance again, 0.8 degrees. I've swapped them over, and they've descended like this to the point where, at the point of convergence, I've said, "Oh, I'm off to bed. I'm happy with that one." But again, for me, it confirms it.
So, Adam, what did you find? What did you find that the average difference was between shade and moonlight? Was it 0.8 degrees?
Between 0.8 and 1.4.
Right. And test. For anyone saying that's insignificant, I mean, this is measured equipment. Most of us get sort of 1 to 4 degrees or something difference. Crazy amounts of difference. But this is measured.
I would put it into context that these machines are calibrated to the purpose that they feel like insulin in fridges. So if you've got a fridge at 3 degrees, it's perfectly fine. If it was to drop 1.2 degrees, making it less than 2, then the insulin starts to denature. So it's very important that these things are very accurate. So
that's my point.
Yeah,
they're not. That, it's easy to go out there with a handgun and a laser or a couple of cheap $199 thermometers off eBay, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've done this 5 times. You can take an average of 5 times and see what's going on. By swapping them over as well, you are creating a control, but with calibrated, measured thermometers, you have a variance of 0.8 degrees, or 0.8, between 0.8 and 0.6 degrees. That's a huge amount of difference. That's a huge differential when we find out before we ask the question, what's the difference between sunlight or moonlight and moon shade. They say you can't measure the difference. You need £1 million thermometer, like I was told by this expert from Cardiff University. You need all this equipment and everything to even measure And what they say is you're going to measure a tiny increase in temperature. And what you have shown here is that it's not tiny, it's rather large, and it's not an increase in temperature, it's a decrease in temperature. So, where does that leave us? Over and out.
Where indeed? I was leaving a dramatic pause in there too, John.
I'll give you a summary, guys. Yeah. So in summary, yeah, the experimental data for me demonstrated a noticeable thermal effect when the instrumentation was exposed to moon. Okay. This effect was contrary to current beliefs as to the nature of light emitted, in that it demonstrated a clear cooling effect of a magnitude outside of the combined error factor of the instrumentation. Results are further supplemented by a switchover of probes in relation to their direct exposure to moonlight. When this exposure to moonlight conditions were reversed, temperature readings changed in line with the supposition that moonlight has a cooling effect. The significance of the results warrants further tests designed for obtaining more quantitative data with obvious improvements to conditional control.
Damn, well said. I'm going to be chopping this up and sending it to the bolometer expert at Cardiff University because enough's enough. Time to put this shit on the table and let's see what's really happening.
I'd like to just chime in a little bit. Is what I don't understand is based on. I mean, like this doesn't come to any surprise. I mean, like we kind of knew what this anyway. But if science is actually telling us something different, there's a bigger, like of well, why the hell would they lie about such a thing? Because these scientists, they must have used the scientific method and done this exact same experiment. What you've done, they must have done. So why all the deceit?
I think you're right. I really do think you're right, Jason. Would this be, and you guys would know this, would this be classed as a scientific experiment? Is there a cause and effect and a hypothesis, and why not?
No, because it's a test, an observational test. And
okay, but you put in a change halfway through as well, which makes it a whatever I can never come up with the words. But you put a change in there by putting it in the tent, didn't you?
Yeah, but there's no cause and effect here. We're just suggesting correlation.
Right. Okay.
That confuses the tits out of me.
It really does me. I mean, like Anthony Riley and Nathan Oakley have explained it so many times, but my little head just can't get round it.
Are any of them available to come in and sort of tell us whether this is experimental or scientific or not? Because I'm confused. Cause and effect.
The data is empirical. Other than that,
I get that. I get that. It's empirical. We're all seeing it, or we can all go and test it. It's an observation. I can see that. We're observing a phenomena. But is there a thesis here? Is there a hypothesis? Sorry, a cause and effect. Is the moon out? Is the cause and the effect is the temperature goes down? I mean, I'm just wondering if this is typically classed as a scientific experiment or not. I mean, the variable is surely varying whether you're exposed to the moon or not exposed to the moon. So that's the variable. What's the other ones?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember.
The standard is set pretty low. I was just sort of pondering on this not too long ago about just your basic childhood science fairs and the requirements needed to enter a science project into the science fair. And pretty soon, well, these are science experiments because we're entering our science projects into the science fair. This is all science. Everything we're doing here is science. I made a volcano. That's effing science. And that's all it takes.
Yeah.
I wonder if they did even bother to do this, or if everybody just bothered to assume that, well, if it's a reflection from the sun, well, obviously it'd be hotter. We don't need to bother to test it. Hell, I'd take a £1 million thermometer. We don't have that kind of money. Of course it'd be hotter. Duh.
Imagine that. I mean, Josh, you hit the nail on the head. Imagine if you put a thermometer in sunlight and one in sunshade, and the one in sunshade was hotter than the one in sunlight. I mean, how crazy would that be? How juxtaposition to your reality would that be? But that's exactly what we're seeing.
And again, I don't think there is a deception on that. I think it's just become with the scientists a given, like, whereas they're not testing. They can't be testing. They're just assuming.
No, you're right. They clearly are assuming, and they're regurgitating what they've been taught, because if you go out there with a thermometer in the sun, in the moonlight or moonshade, sunlight, sunshade, doesn't matter. This is measurable, and it's been measurable numerous times. People have I've done this 5 times myself, but I've never filmed it. But I've done it with my kids 5 times, and there must be a deception here, because they're telling us that there is a minute temperature increase, but you can't measure it unless you have £1 million bits of kit. And we're showing quite conclusively that you don't need that. And it's the exact opposite of what they're saying. But the exact opposite of what they're saying implies that the sun is not a reflection of the moon. Sorry, that was screwed up. That the moon's moon rays are not reflections of the sun. I'll shut up now.
No, that was okay.
I got it, John. I knew what you were trying to say.
Trying being the operative word.
You get it out of it.
I think you leave it for what it is. It's a good observation that is repeatable by anybody that does raise a question and contradict the current model. It's not an experiment test that we can all do. It doesn't prove or cause anything.
That's the question I'd like to put to Nathan or Riley. As is this? I mean, I don't know. This isn't a challenge. I don't know. Is it regarded as an experiment, scientific in any way?
Yeah, I think Adam's right. But I think we all need to go to Oakley School. I think we all should not just understand what is the scientific method, but understand how to actually to demonstrate it, to repeat this to others. When I go out and speak to people on the road and that, and he's got some terrific wording for me to pass on to people, and to I need to go to Anthony Riley and Nathan Oakley School to regurgitate that part.
You don't. You need to realise this isn't science, what's happening here. And as John put it, right, you need to step outside the paradigm that says it's just a reflection of the sunlight, and realise that if for some reason you were able to be shown that the sun's light, it was a degree cooler in the shade, you would start to question what you're told with regards to how sunlight works, because it's quite bloody obvious. Okay? Now, they've got their mitigating science, which doesn't prove the point, but this is a repeatable thing that anybody can go and do themselves. And this is the powerful thing about it for me. Go outside, and if you can be asked to spend a bit of time, you can test it yourself.
Yeah.
And then nobody has to tell you anything.
And I think one way to put in a decent segue between the whole of what we've been doing over the last few weeks is to couple this information with the impossible moon phase information, and you start to understand that the moon phases aren't the reflection that we're seeing from Earth, and the moonlight is not in any way, it doesn't have the properties of a reflected hot light from the sun. And basically you come to the conclusion that everything you've been taught is a complete and utter lie, and we need to get back to basics and define this stuff and test these things again, to realize that the heliocentric ball model just doesn't work. So I will pass the conch on and bid farewell. Thanks to everyone.
Is that your way of saying you're leaving for the night, John?
He's off to bed, isn't he?
I think he's asleep halfway out the door already. Just fell out of his chair. Well, good night, John. We love you, cuz. You have a great rest of your weekend.
Good night, John. Man knows how to make an exit.
That's right. No room for awkward pauses that way. So, Jason, you said you had some stuff on Tide you wanted to tie in with the moon?
Yeah, well, I'll be brief because it's getting late for you guys. And all it is that I watched a recent video, and you guys may have seen it. It was by My Perspective. And he did a video called... Oh, God, give us a second. My computer just froze. YouTube. 1 second. Can you hear me, guys?
Nope, we can still hear you, at least for the time being.
Oh, right, it just moved. God,
there you go.
My computer just froze, and I couldn't hear no one or see anything. Or so My Perspective. He did this video about the moon. Does it cause the tides or not? And this is one of the biggest questions that I get. Not necessarily questions, proofs. I get people on the street and they say, "Oh, this is a proof of gravity because the moon causes the tides." And so tell them no, it doesn't. But then I never knew what to give them. What do you actually give them? So it was a difficult question for me. Now, if I put this on my phone, I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll put it up to this is I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that, guys?
Yes, the oblong egg-shaped water around the ball Earth.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And that kind of makes no sense whatsoever, does it? No. Like that the moon would be pulling one side, and what is it doing? What is it? It's inflating the opposite side. I mean, it's ridiculous. That is. It makes no sense whatsoever. And My Perspective, he was he put this great video out, Flat Earth and Tides Prove the Earth is Not Spinning. And he mentioned about the Maldives. Now the Maldives, they're right on the equator, and if and when the moon is going across and that, and it's right over the Maldives, like on the equator. I mean, like that should be the greatest pull, you would think, wouldn't it? Right on the Maldives. And these Maldive islands, their tides are less than a foot, which makes no sense, because if that is the model that we're to believe, and then we get in places like Canada, we have the other end of the spectrum, where the moon, isn't passing right over Canada, and they get tides up to about 40 feet. That's just that it's nonsense. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's been on my mind lately, and it's been plaguing me a little bit. And so what is the tides? What is it? What is causing the tides? And I'm just spitballing, but I kind of thought that how much was it rainwater? How much water is being evaporated a day? And it's over 1,400 cubic kilometers. And what that breaks down to be is 10,000 times the amount of consumed water by the whole of the United States. 10,000. That's per day. That's how much is being evaporated, which is quite a bit. And I kind of wonder, well, so how much is that? How much rainwater per day is Earth having? And it's about 907 million tons of rainwater falls every minute. Every minute, 907 million tons. So I kind of thought, well, isn't that causing the tides? Doesn't that make more sense that would, the amount that is being, I suppose, hoovered away from, from Earth, all this water being hoovered away and then dumped back on Earth, wouldn't that make more sense that is causing the tides more than this magical, Harry Potter style wizardry of something pulling all this water towards the moon and yet inflating it on the other side? Makes no sense. So I was just that's all I had to give. I just wanted to just to put that out there, and maybe someone else has thought about, and maybe they've got some answers. Could the pure process of evaporation and rainwater, could that not be causing the tides? Because we have the sun, going around, once a day, and it's evaporating, and of course when that once that area is cooled down and that, then we would have rain, as some part of the Earth. I
definitely always tied the idea of the tides themselves into the electromagnetic idea of the sun passing overhead, but I never thought about the fact of the evaporation and all that tying into it. So that definitely adds a layer that would make sense.
I never give it a thought at all myself, it was just watching that video and thought, well, I almost I want a better explanation than oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. I just don't know that bit yet. Because
I think the low tides would be more salinized than the high tides. Yeah, you'd have more fresh water in high tides than you would in the low tides. Low tides would be more concentrated seawater as opposed to the high tides with the excess rainwater. So if that were the case, I suppose you could measure the salinization of the water to see if there's a difference. Just off the top.
Yeah. I think it's a line of discussion, worth investigating, and I'm hoping that might be just a thing for somebody else to take this on further. I don't have a scientific background to even come up with any sort of experiments to test any of this. If there is such an experiment, I don't know. Yeah, that's all I had to say on the moon, but it just kind of it made perfect sense watching my perspectives video, and it really makes no sense, where, as I say, the Maldives only get less than 1 foot of tidal increase, and it makes no sense.
Nope, you're right. You'd think there would be an explanation. That's obviously where it would be the strongest. If that's what the case was, then right there along the equator, you would think you'd find the highest tides.
I would think so. Yeah, and but there should be there's the other part to it as well. Even if there's the moon is pulling on one side, it should be an equal tide throughout the whole Earth. It should be, because even if it's being pulled, say 40 feet one way, towards the moon, then it must be losing 40 feet somewhere else on the Earth, would it not be? And then that would be replaced. So surely the tides would be equal, should be equal all around the Earth.
I guess that's a good question. I wonder if people actually think that if high tide somewhere means it's going to be low tide somewhere else, like the sunset, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
So I would like to have more discussions on this in the future.
I always dislinked the moon and the tides from the non-correlatory manner of the two, but also that you get more than 2 tides a day.
Yeah.
That in itself is...
And one moon.
Ooh, those maths just don't add up.
No, but I mean, like, you know, I actually thought it was to do with maybe air pressure or something, you know, like, because if we're saying that the sun and moon are a lot closer, then that's a big volume of added air pressure around the earth, and maybe that would have a correlation with the tides. Maybe, I don't know.
See, that makes sense. I could see how that would have an effect.
See, as with everything with the moon, Josh, I ain't got a Scooby-Doo.
No.
I love it, but
yeah,
it's too mysterious.
It aches me on the street, you know, when people give me this this proof why we definitely are on a globe because of the tides. And yeah, all I can do is turn around and say, well, okay, well, there's no tides on the large bodies of water like the Caspian Sea and all that, even though they say that there is, you know, like, but we're talking centimeters, you know, of something, you know, but that could be just, again, evaporation.
Well, Maryland Spirit Level in chat says tides are from below, the earth breathes, which is definitely something I had looked into early on in this. Even I was looking into that idea back when I was just trying to figure out, things about the coming earth changes and just, you know, even before flat earth. So that's definitely something I've looked at.
Yeah, that's a third one. There is, I've heard that one before, but again, it's still something that, how do we prove such a thing? You know, like it's like I've just come up with 2 great stories. It's another story, and it sounds great. But how do we prove such a thing?
Absolutely. Well, this is definitely an area that someone needs to get on. I don't know even how to even approach testing this. That's Adam's department.
There you go. Next challenge.
If you want to do it scientifically, you've just got to vary the moon. See if the tide changes. If you just stop the moon, you can prove scientifically that it's the tides that are caused by the moon.
It's only a paper moon.
But that's if you want to do it scientifically.
Well, there's something for us all to ponder about. I think on that note, I might be calling it a night and wishing you all good night, sirs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. It's been an amazing evening, as always. It looks like, did we lose everybody else? Did Roxanne stay? Look, I see her. There she is.
Oh, yeah, she's still here.
She's still here.
She'll be listening.
I'm always chasing my little floating window on this damn Zoom. I never know where anybody is. But yeah, I'm flagging quickly myself. Thank you all so much. Jason, Robin, Roxanne.
John, Adam, Zach, Walt.
And the rest. Thank you. And the rest.
That was fun, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Really enjoyed tonight. And yeah, stay focused stay tuned for next time you have us. We'll have a lot more information on the next people who join the tour and the next people who are joining the conventions.
Good. I'm expecting some big names next time, or
I know, right? All this build up. Waiting for the payoff.
But we should have Dee and Gary on next week.
Gary was in chat a little earlier. I saw Gary earlier. So thank you, Gary, for hanging out with us, even though you weren't here on the show.
I'd like to get Travis on in next week, maybe to pop on and give us an update about how's it going on with him in court over there, Red Hen Radio. Plain truth, I know he's been busy fighting the man, railing against the system. So I'll be curious to how it's going for him. I think he even offered to pop in this evening, but I'll be damned if I didn't see it till just a few minutes ago. So
I don't even have any of that open, so I missed it too, man. Darn.
It's all right.
That's what happened last Friday. He was trying to send links through the whole show, and I didn't have Skype open because we're using this now, and I missed all of it till the end.
Yep, that's where I
Sorry,
found it.
Travis.
But I got the message out there, so like I said, hopefully next week we'll have Travis on to give us an update. Let's see, beyond that, I did get somebody booked for the Ironworks. Not next week on Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, February 26th. We're going to have on Matt Landman.
Nice.
Who's the creator of the documentary Frankenskies, and who is another guy out there railing against the system and fighting against the man and trying to stop this 5G takeover. So between the 5G and the chemtrails, I think we're going to have another great conversation on the Ironworks over there on Truth Frequency Radio and TFRlive.com on Tuesday the 26th, starting at 4 a.m. Central. That's 10 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, 2 a.m. Pacific.
Well, on that note, Josh, impromptu Ironworks.
Impromptu Ironworks, yes. This Tuesday's episode, we shall call it, of the Ironworks. This is again our ineptitude as to how we missed Tuesday's show. I was sick on Friday, despite my constitution of granite. I managed to get sick, and on Tuesday I was willing to do it, but I guess out of the rhythm, and I wasn't quite ready for the show. And I woke up at 10 minutes to 4, realizing that I needed 10 minutes to be live on air. So we rolled in just in the nick of time, only to hear ourselves start talking, trying to scratch our heads thinking, what the fuck just happened? But it was still set to a rebroadcast. So we couldn't set it to live and still change it. So we figured, well, fuck, we're up. Looks like TFR's been handled. We might as well go live on YouTube. Why the fuck not? So we went live on YouTube for a little impromptu Ironworks.
And had a blast. It was great. I loved it. I wish we could do it every morning that we're not on TFR. That would definitely involve a huge commitment from you, sir, with your early morning work times.
Well, I'm telling you what, I'll get a computer over there to you, Walt. There's no reason it need to be a 2-man show or a 3-man show. I'm sure you and Zach could handle it just fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to get that set up soon so I can have the multimedia platform here in the studio.
You just want more real estate, don't you?
That's it. I've heard. I've learned. I'm watching the best. I'm learning from the best. And speaking of the Ironworks, I have already, even as we started the show here, had downloaded this morning's show with Sarah. And I'm going to work on getting a video made. Probably not this weekend. I have some commitments already, but we'll work on it maybe Sunday. Try to have that up for next week so that everyone can enjoy it here on our channel. And I'll probably have it over on Flat Earth Head channel as well. So
hey, you want me to try to clean that audio up a little bit? You just want to run it the way it is with all of it, or do you want to?
I downloaded the high quality version. It should be okay.
All right.
And if it's not, I'll throw it your way for sure.
Well, that first 9 minutes you could probably cut out, apparently. That really was
you're funny. I love this guy.
Apparently,
there's a New Jersey meetup on the 24th, according to Maryland Spirit Level in chat. So thank you for that. I'm not sure where or when, but it's February 24th. I mean, I see when. I'm just not sure the where in New Jersey, but thank you. Go over to Maryland's channel if you're not a subscriber and do that as well.
There's a meetup in New Jersey on February 24th, but I don't know when or where.
I mean, specifically where, this dude, it's late. I've been doing this a while. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just giving that meeting
all the crap. Apparently, Phuket Word is having some troll attacks. So go shout out and support his channel, according to Flat Earth here on the chat as well. Just playing catch up in chat. Thank you all. I'm not going to go back too far because I'll get lost and we'll be here another 30 minutes.
I'll reach back out to Nick on email. See if
absolutely. Thank you, Plin 2112 for the debate in chat there. Come hang out with us. We're here every Friday.
Not for much longer. I'm going to say good night, guys.
I'll say good night.
It's been a pleasure.
As well, Gracie.
Good night, all.
Good night, Zach.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Good night, Roxanne.
What we're going to play out with, Josh?
Well, we were talking about
good night, Jason.
I still got Travis's little promo stinger here, his little drop we can play out. Always nice to have Issa singing.
Yep.
So we'll do that. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great, great Friday night with everybody here. I love it. I definitely missed it. I could tell that I wasn't here last Friday.
We did.
And thank you for the kind words, too, by the way. All right. Get the fuck out of here. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the show where you don't know if it's part of the show.
Welcome to Red Hen Radio, where truth fears no investigation. What do you know? What do you believe? Who are you? Where did you come from? Where are you going? How will you determine the way? What you think is news for you is only and absolutely propaganda. It's spin. There is no news for you. Only misdirection and disinformation. Join us here at Red Hat Radio as we discover how to squint when what we see isn't what ought to be. Because truth is not counterintuitive. Reading between the lines of the story you were just fed. I'm your host, Travis Finley. Welcome to the show. Do you know you're part of the show?
Well, you don't know if it's part of the show.